Hey, this is Matt. Once again, welcome to another video. There's another paid request, this time from Mr. Leeman. And for those interested in requesting any type of videos, feel free to send them either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. I'll get to them as soon as I can. And this is for the film Deadly Justice from 1985. Now, there is another title, but it's a word that YouTube doesn't like me saying. It's a word that rhymes with grape, of Richard Beck. And it's a TV movie starring Richard Crenna. Now, Richard Crenna, I'm a big fan of. He played Colonel Troutman in the first three Rambo films. He was in films like Leviathan from 1989, Hot Shots Part 2, or Hot Shots Part 2, playing a version of Colonel Troutman in that. Always like Richard Crenna. And this is actually a film he won an Emmy Award for. I thought he did a rather good job. I would easily say he's the best part of this. It's worth a watch at least once for him. It is on YouTube for free. That and the concept is interesting. The fact of being daring and a bit different, especially for the time. Because Richard Crenna, he plays a tough cop. Seems like the type you would see in a Dirty Harry, Charles Bronson, Clint Eastwood, any variety of movies. He's a guy that works cases with his partner where he has his attitude that doesn't respect women a whole lot. And he has a son, he has an ex-wife, he's got a girlfriend. And, okay, for example, there would be times where he'll be driving around with his partner and he'll be talking like, they're the quarry, we're the hunters in control, meaning the criminals. Or there's a woman that has been attacked, is at a phone booth, and he's nonchalantly trying to get her out, he even grabs her and drags her out. Come on, let's get this going, let's get this moving. Or there's a dead woman found, and there's a bet being made on who can hold their breath the longest because of the smell. Now, it's utilizing this case of this rather unlikable guy, but it's doing it for a reason, because then it gets to a point where Richard Crenna, he is gun-ho, he's so sure of himself, he chases after these two criminals, but they get the drop on him and they sexually assault him. Now, of course, this is a TV movie, so thankfully it's done where you get the hint, but there's nothing graphic about it, and there's nothing in detail. It doesn't go for a long, extended time. Again, this is 1985 TV, so they're not going to show much, but you get the idea. It's more about the aftermath and Richard Crenna, him being in the place, understand how other people feel, how people treat him afterward. Some people blaming him as if it's his own fault. Some people saying, even one cop goes, some people have been talking that you knew those guys before, maybe it's not the first time, so they're insinuating that he's gay. I wish they went further with that, as there's really just brought up one time, and then Richard Crenna, smashes the guy, just, well, what the hell are you talking about? And Richard Crenna did a really good job with a range of emotions showing this trauma. And you have some recognizable people around in the supporting cast. Like the two people that assaulted him was Nicholas Worth. He was in Swamp Thing, the Wes Craven film. He was in Darkman. He was the star of this film called Don't Answer the Phone. Bigger guy. If you see him, you know who I'm talking about. And also MC Gainey, who was the convict pilot in Con Air, and he's done a lot of other stuff too. He was actually in this other film I'm going to review, Bobby Z, with Paul Walker. He's done quite a bit of stuff as a character actor, so they're both the two criminals that assault Richard Crenna. In a word that rhymes with grape. Richard Crenna's partner, I forget what movies he's been in, is George DeSundra. I know I've seen him in other stuff. I can't remember where from, though, but I know I recognize him from somewhere. His ex-wife is the lady who's the mom in Gremlins. cool to see her. And this came around the same time of Gremlins. This lady who worked with people who's been assaulted, Meredith Baxter. She was the mom on Family Ties with Michael J. Fox. She has a role in this. I think they could have done a bit more with her role. I thought there'd be a lot more interaction between her and Richard Crenna. Not really. There's a few bits here and there. But it's more about Richard Crenna trying to go through it himself. Trying to ignore it, but then having to explain, and the embarrassment of explaining what's going on. I didn't try to handle it. There's a point where he crumbles in the shower. There's a point where he is talking to his dad, played by Pat Hindle. Now, Pat Hindle, he's been in a lot of stuff. I remember him as the boss of the gas station in Maximum Overdrive. He's in one of the Dirty Harry films. I want to say it was the one with the female vigilante. That's Sudden Impact. I want to say he was in Sudden Impact. Could be wrong, though. But yeah, of course, he's Commissioner Gordon in the Tim Burton Batman movies and the Joe Schumacher Batman movies. He was Commissioner Gordon. So he's done a lot of stuff. And it's more of a drama. It's more of a drama. And like I say, it's more of a showcase of Richard Crenna's ordeal and what he's been through. So if you like Richard Crenna and you want to see him push himself in terms of acting, and I kind of appreciate the story of the plot, because this stuff has happened, but it's frowned upon because, you know, how many movies have we seen where it's a woman that's been assaulted? Very rarely have you seen about a guy that's been assaulted. Now, the title Deadly Justice, which is an alternate title for this, it's misleading because it makes you think it's going to be like a death wish or like a revenge movie where he's out going to get his gun, he's going to get revenge of the people. No, that's not the case at all. If you go on this expecting an action movie, if you go on this expecting a revenge movie, you're going to be completely disappointed. It's not that. There's barely any action. It's not that. There's a little bit early on where he fights a guy and he kicks a guy. There's another bit where a guy's got the gun on him, and he's like, "Well, if you stab me," actually, no, it's a gun. It's a. No, he has. I think he has a knife on Richard Crenna. He's like, "Well, you know what? You could do that, but this guy don't shoot through you," and then he grabs the guy and beats him up. But they do find the guys who did it, but it's more about him getting the guts to finally call them out when they're in the lineup. Or he's talking with his ex-wife. He's like, "Listen, I'm not a charity case." Yeah, I know, but you know, I still love you, and it does get to a point that he does save a girl, because earlier in the film he was so nonchalant about these things. He gave up someone who assaulted a woman in order to get a murderer, but by the end of the film he does find that guy, stops him, and saves a lady, and now he approaches the lady in a very different manner. So it's to show the character arc of how he approaches her. It's like, "Yeah, trust me, I know how you feel." I mean, by the end of the film, he's giving a speech how sometimes you need to be tough, cold, and indifferent, but then you just get that. And you say to yourself, could have been my wife, my girlfriend, or could have been me. So I say Richard Crenna does a very valiant job, and a very... Not a lot of guys in the 80s would have taken this kind of role, because they'd be looked at as too... It'd be looked as not manly enough, especially if it didn't result in a revenge Death Wish style type of finale or anything of that note. I do have issues with the film, getting a bit more specific, or spoilers, or however you want to put it. I do wish certain things were more resolved. I wish there's a bit more resolution to certain things. Like the last time he talks with Meredith Baxter, the counselor, he's like, oh, I don't need to talk about it. She's like, oh, why? Because you're a guy? Because you're a cop? And she kind of walks off, and he tries to talk to her. There's never any resolution of that. There's never any resolution of he's going to go up and talk to her, or he's going to start doing these therapy sessions. None of that ever comes to play. So I thought her character could have been utilized a bit more and a bit better. Maybe a bit more verbiage back and forth between the two. Hostile at first, but then warming up as it went along. So I think they could have utilized her a lot more. Also, that he has his girlfriend that is barely in the film. She's in it for like 2 or so scenes. And at the end, he like gets frustrated with her, like throws her. Is like, why you let me keep using you? Why don't you have more respect for yourself? You made me sick. I bet I could do anything I want with you, huh? Kind of get to her point of, don't make me, don't let me do that. Don't let me and others walk over you, just like someone did to me. But there's no resolution. There's no phone call. Listen, I'm sorry, but there's no ever any resolution of that. So there's no finality to that part. Just last time we see her, she's crying and scared, and he's, shaking his head, and then walks off. So it feels like for a movie that's still 90 minutes long, there's certain spots that could have been put in there that have more fulfilling or satisfying ending. And like I said, it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, because like I said, Daily Justice, that title, you're expecting a revenge action movie. Is not the case at all. So to repeat myself one last time, if you're a Richard Crenna fan and you want to see him really do a good job acting wise, and again, a movie I appreciate having been made because no one speaks up for the men that go through that. Many times it's the women that go through that, understandably so, because it's a horrible, horrible thing. But it has happened to men as well, and like I said, I think there's certain things they could have pushed a bit more. Now, granted, maybe they could have because of time, budget, because it's a TV movie. Maybe certain bits of Richard Crenna's acting could have been even more full force if given a bit more time to polish up the script or dot the I's, cross the T's in certain sections. But overall, it was definitely an interesting watch. Not something I would ever see again. But like I said, I miss Richard Crenna. I'm glad he won the Emmy for this. I could say he deserved it. And I'm glad he won an award. I'm glad he got some kind of recognition. And again, it seems like there's elements that could have been a lot more deeper, a lot more emotional. I think there's a lot of avenues that they didn't dig up and utilize more. I think there's a bit more left on the table what could have been done in terms of, like I said, delving more with him and the therapist lady played by Meredith Baxter, or the relationship with his girlfriend, or he tells his son, listen, one day we're going to have to, there's a point I yell at you, I apologize, maybe one day if you ever want to talk, and if you have any questions. Or like his daughter comes up, and I forgot he even had a daughter character, because she comes up and hugs him. I'm like, that might have been the first, well, maybe not the first, but I'm like, I completely forgot he has a daughter. So that's to me, like, some characters are kind of not either forgotten or utilized well, or it's like, I forgot he had a girlfriend, or I forgot he had a daughter, and it's either a bit more fine-tuned, or the script a bit more, a few more passes on it, but other than that, it's at the least interesting to watch. And maybe it's one of those things that with the TV format, you have to do, you can't go, I don't know, all the hindrances that you would have in a 1985 TV movie of what you could and couldn't do. And plus, I don't know the director. I don't recognize anything the person's done, so maybe different writer-director to strengthen up some things. But overall, like I said, nice work by Richard Crenna, and great to see a movie with him again, because I do miss the guy, and underrated actor, and he did a good job. So that's it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.